My name is Gerry, I'm from Wild Eye, and this is episode 6 in a series of videos in which I answer your wildlife photography questions. Let's do it.
Alyssa asked on Facebook, having attended a few photographic safaris, I realized most of them are not really aimed at improving your skill, but rather just a safari. How do you make sure that photographers are learning and gaining knowledge?
Alyssa, this is a very, very pertinent question for anybody who has been on or is planning to go on a photographic safari. Before I answer, let me tell you a quick story. A couple of years ago, my wife's a personal trainer, and she was chatting to a client on the treadmill, and the client was telling her about her photographic safari experience. I got the call after their session was finished from Adele saying that I need to maybe phone this woman because she had horror stories from her experience. It's things like going out, this was in the Chobe, going out and the photographic host, facilitator, guide, whatever you want to call him, was more concerned about the one or two people he knew than anybody else. If he didn't feel their or her skill level was up there, he just wouldn't bother. And most importantly, and this really is what it's all about, he thought it was just about his images. And that is just so wrong. Now, your question revolves around what makes our photographic safaris different. Now, just short of going off on a whole marketing tangent about telling you why we are so great, and I really think we are, but I think as an industry, what you need to look for, whichever operator you look at, is, number one, look at guest feedback. And if it's the same people all the time, there's maybe a bit of a concern. But from a photographic safari point of view, what I think it should be, and this is my opinion personally, it should be, first of all, about the experience of wildlife photography. It should be about, even if your camera blows up halfway and you come back with 0 images, you should still remember it as a great trip. So the experience is very, very important. Then, second of all, it needs to be about you getting good images and your guide, your photographic host, doing what he can to get those shots for you. But there's one more, and this is something I pride myself and my team on, is we also want you to leave with new skills. You see, every single one of my guides, I said in the previous episode, some of the guys, Penny, Chad, Morkel, they're all doing their Fagasa coming up, so they'll be qualified guides. But more than this, there's a certain ethos of teaching. There's a feeling of sharing, of imparting knowledge, and I know we're good at that. There's other companies that also have great guides that can do the same. It's not about the guide. That's the most important thing. It pisses me off to no end when I hear stories of the guide sitting in the front row, diving in front of people to get their shots. Holy hell, you as the guest, you're paying the money for him to be there to make your experience. And now he's after his shots. That's rubbish. That's absolute rubbish. So that is the first thing that I would look for, is make sure that the guide is there for you. It's a difficult thing, but you need to chat to him. You need to chat to previous guests. Not just look at comments. Ask for the guest's phone number, phone them and find out what it's like. I remember a moment, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago in the Mara, where I was shooting I had a 600mm lens. One of the clients was a bit short. We were watching cheetah hunting, and she couldn't reach. So I said, you know what, here, take my lens. Done. I sat back and I watched the experience. My experience as a guide was more important to me was the look on her face when she got the shots using the equipment. I'm not there to get my shots. And any guide who hosts a photographic safari who does that is wrong, and he should be fired, straight out. Now, there's a lot of new people, new guides coming into the industry with no experience, no hospitality background, and they come from different genres. Now, every one of those things, I think, plays a vital, vital, vital part in the ultimate photographic experience for you. It's a must. I mean, you could be good at shooting weddings. You're going to be a shitty wildlife photographer. Not always, but a lot of the time. Hospitality background. Look whether the guide and the company has a hospitality background. I think between Marlon, myself, and Andrew, we must have in excess of about 30 years worth of hospitality experience, dealing with guests, making experiences for people out in the field. It's vital, 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 vital. Your shot shouldn't happen by accident. A dedicated photographic safari should be focused on getting the shot. There's times when you're going to sit for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours waiting for something to happen. And during that time, we've had times where in the vehicle we're working on Lightroom, people have their laptops out, this, that, the other, waiting for a crossing, waiting for the shot, waiting for the light to change. A good photographic safari should challenge you It should inspire you. It should challenge you creatively and technically. It should take you out of a comfort zone so that you can grow as a photographer. So I'm going to backtrack again. A photographic safari, gee whiz, see, I'm still having coffee. A photographic safari should be about, number one, the experience of wildlife photography. Number two, you getting the shots. And a very close third, you leaving there with new skills. My opinion anyway.
Sarah asked on Facebook, any tips for wildlife photography in Madagascar? And what is your preference when it comes to choosing between a prime or zoom telephoto lens for wildlife, and why?
Sarah, first off, Madagascar, I have no idea. I can't help you. I haven't been there. I would love to get there. I'm thinking the name I'm looking for is Morris, Dale Morris, I think. Look him up on Facebook. I think he's been up there, and he might be able to answer that for you. As a photographic destination, I'd love to get there. So if you want to take me out there, let me know. Next question. Prime and zoom telephoto lenses, what is my choice? I think it's a tough one, depending on how far I'm going. Look, prime is quality. There's no doubt that a 400 2.8, a 300 2.8, a 600 f4, that is where the quality is. That's where your apertures generally go larger, 2.8 f4, which means it can suck up a whole bunch more, much more? I'll work on this afterwards. Much more light than, for example, a 100 to 400, which goes to 5.6 or 6.3. So if I'm after quality, if my travel bag, my camera bag, and the airlines allows me, I will always go for prime. That being said, there's a lot to be said for 100, 400, and 80, 400, both from a budget point of view, which is most people's concern, but also the ability to zoom in and out and get different types of shot. But if I'm on a workshop or on a private guided trip, what I would try and do is I would challenge my guests to shoot prime. Why? Because it makes you, it's a creative crutch, if you will, because you can't, now suddenly zoom in, zoom out to make it easier. You might be stuck in a certain spot. You can only get this composition. You now have to go deeper. You have to roll deep and look for different types of images, different ways of shooting. Do I shoot this way, that way? Do I wait for the moment? So as a creative crutch, and I mean this in a good way, I think a prime is going to be better for you as a photographer to grow long term than the easy option of zooming in and out. But don't dismiss them offhand. If you have the option, I would take, for example, a 400 2.8 and a 70 to 200. Those are both telephotos, but they offer me very different things. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But if I had to put my money one side, I would go prime any day of the week.
Chicky asked on Facebook, can you do a segment where you show pictures pre and post editing?
Chicky, I like this question because there are still photographers, wildlife photographers, and others, I suppose, out there that say, oh, no, I do everything in camera, I don't process my images. Bullshit. It doesn't work that way. You cannot shoot in camera and post and expect your images to become so well received and amazing. Every good wildlife photographer, every half-decent wildlife photographer, every great wildlife photographer, when they post the images out there, it has been processed. Whether it's processed this much or a huge amount of time spent, they have done something to it. So I'm gonna cut now. I'll do a Lightroom, just a quick before and after for you, just to talk through a few things, and then we'll come back. Check this out. Right, Chucky, so like I said, every single image that goes online, at least from my point of view, has been edited somehow. You have to process your images because what you're shooting is raw information and you have to bring the best out of it. So here's a whole bunch of random images of mine that I'm showing you before on the left, after on the right, and just a few thoughts on each. I hope this helps in what you're looking for. So in here you can see very quickly, exposure up, little bit of shadows lifted, maybe some sharpness and some saturation. Next one, not that dramatic. So this one, very close. What you will notice here is I did remove out of this image this sign that was in front of the tree. So I took that out. The rest of it is a very small tweak just to get the best out of the information. Same one here. It's not dramatic. You see, you don't have to overdo these things. Just pull and kind of polish it off so it looks good. Very slight increase in saturation, very slight increase in contrast and exposure. What have we got here? Right, so this was shot in the Mara, obviously migration, slightly underexposed, so I lifted that up and then played with contrast and a little bit of saturation, maybe some warmth as well, just to kind of get that little touch of orange into the into the image on the right, the final image. Again, you see, so Chicky, you should be seeing it's kind of all the same. There's not huge dramatic differences here. Stars is a very unique one because a lot of the time you're shooting very specific long exposures, underexposures and stuff to get the most out of the stars, and then you have to work it a bit. So this one did get a little bit more TLC. Again, straight up, increased some saturation, lifted the shadows a bit. You can see the foreground has a bit more detail to it. Again, saturation, I think here I did selective saturation where I pushed the blues up a bit, which is the sky, a little bit of green, and then obviously oranges on the cat. Underexposure, see, in fact, I actually spoke to someone a bit earlier on today about shooting in the snow. So this one I underexposed horribly. Shooting in RAW, I was able to bring it back and still have a workable image. Not dramatic, you see. Get stuff right in camera and just polish it up before you then present it, either online or as a print as your final image. Again, saturation, just a touch of saturation. This one demanded a bit more work, and I did specific work in the sky here to get the clouds out, because when I took the image, that's what I saw. So the vision here for me was what I saw and experienced I wanted to show, and all my adjustments was made to try and get me to that place. Slight underexposure. In this case, I remember this clearly. We were on the water going up and down, and I couldn't get my shutter speed fast enough, so I underexposed it slightly to get my shutter speed up at the time, and then knowing I could just bring the details, the shadows, exposure, and saturation to pull that back in. Nothing dramatic. Original on the left, final version on the right. Same thing, there's just some saturation and contrast applied there. This one was horrible. This was me hanging out the window, my arm out the window to get the shot as we drove past this guy. So looking at it now, it does look like it's a little bit, the shadows have been lifted too much, but you can see what happened there. The blues are bluer and the dark areas were just made lighter. Same thing, saturation, a little bit of contrast and shadows. Look at the area underneath on the bird's stomach. That's why I try to bring just that little bit of detail in, but be careful, don't overdo it. Slow shutters, this is my world, I love this stuff. But again, from original on the left, new on the right, very small difference. Same thing. Sure, almost exact, not much there. So this will take me 10 seconds, not even 5 seconds to process. Svalbard, easy with white. I just lifted it up even more to enhance that white feeling of the snow. That's about it. Maybe some contrast just on the animal. Original on the left. That's what we saw in my mind and my emotions. It was way more orange. So I just went to a happy medium that is still correct. But remember, raw information, and you have to pull out to what you get on your final one. Again, little bathing, little weaver. Not much difference. And that's about it. Right, so you see, the difference between a before and after in some cases is very negligible. It's small, but in some cases you have to punch the darks, the shadows. You might have underexposed in the field. We mess things up. It happens all the time. So is it important to process your images? It is vital, not just for online world, but for print, books, whatever else you're going to do as well. You cannot get away by not doing it. See, it doesn't have to be a hell of a thing. It doesn't have to be a huge drama to process your stuff. Lightroom is easy. It's easier than Photoshop, and it has the same power. So go that route. It's easy. A couple of sliders and you're done. I had a thought now which is just gone. What did I want to say? Online, Lightroom, what was I going to say? You see now, so excited about this whole thing. Processing your images, putting them out there, you have to process them. If I remember what I wanted to say, I'll come back to this later on. Anyway, so yes, I process my images before I put them out all the time, but I go for natural. I never change the content of the frame. I don't remove stuff and put stuff in. I do as much in camera as possible, process to get to my final vision, and then I post it online.
Naomi asked on Facebook, my question, how to pick winner, is about personal winners, not comps, as I'm with you on the strangeness of them.
Naomi, I'm glad you came back to me. A couple of episodes ago, Naomi asked, how do I pick a winner? Now, at that stage, it was based either on a competition where a bunch of strange judges tell you whether you're a good photographer or not. Rubbish. But in this case, Naomi came back and said, right, how to pick a winner is for you personally. First of all, It's exactly that. It has to be personal. You have to choose your images for you. Now, I've had a couple of discussions with Penny specifically around this, is when you look at your Lightroom catalog, for example, so you go on a trip, you have all these images lined up. Now you have to choose which ones are the better ones, the winners, if you will. There's a couple of ways. Either I like to go through as a thumbnail, and I will scroll through, and then I will stop on certain ones that catches my eye, make it big, and then assess it from there. I find it useless for me to look at one image for like 30 seconds, stare at it. You've seen it. Nothing's going to change. So if it didn't speak to you off the bat as a raw file before you've processed it, I wouldn't worry. Now, once there's an image that catches my attention for whatever reason, whether it be the mood, the emotion, the color, not the sharpness. Stop hassling about sharpness. We're answering that in the next episode. Sharpness, different story. Once an image speaks to me, and I want it, it's not a winner yet, but I will then look at what can I do to get the best out of this raw information. First of all, there's 3 steps for me during the process. Once an image speaks to me for all those other reasons. Number 1, create the canvas. Straighten your horizon, remove dust spots, and crop. Strengthen the story as much as possible and clean up the canvas you're going to work on. Then do your general adjustments, basic sharpening, whatever else you need to do, and then do localized adjustments and pick out things that speaks to you. So pull out, for example, the color of the sky a bit more, but keep it natural. And then, once I've got like 4 or 5 processed images, I'll sit back and go through them again. And if they still speak to me, if one jumps out, that for me would be a winner. Now, we all have our different processes, different workflows. The most important thing is that it's a winner for you. I've put images out, and I've showed people images that I think is just mind-blowing. It speaks to me both because I was there when it was taken, and a creative vision that I had at the time came together, so that image speaks to me. People look at it and think, what the hell was he thinking? So it has to be a winner for you, and you cannot, must not ever let anybody online or in the real world tell you that's not a winner. If you like it, that's the end of it. That's where it stops. Don't worry what people say. Put your work out there. Put your own winners out there. Whether if you want to do competitions, hey, good luck to you. Put your images in there. If you want to post them on Facebook or on your website, it's your winner. You decide which one it is. Put it out from there. Again, Andy Warhol said way back that your job is to make art, i.e. make images. Put it out there. While people are wondering and discussing and bitching and moaning whether it's good or not, you carry on and make more images, make more winners. But remember, a winner is what you make it.
Kylie asked on email, do you think there's a reason there seems to be so few females in the wildlife photography field?
Kylie, this is a very, very, very interesting question, and something we've spoken about in the office, on trips with certain guests. So I thought, seeing the question involves female wildlife photographer, I'm going to find a female wildlife photographer, and luckily I have one in the office. This is what Penny had to say.
This is a really interesting question. I've only been in the world of wildlife photography for the last couple of years now, but I have noticed there is a bit of I suppose it's more male dominated than female, but I don't think it's any reason on style or who's better or what sex is better or if it's gender orientated. In regards to South Africa, the reason I personally think there's more male photographers than females, that a lot of the photographers that are posting their images and becoming very well known are field guides. So they mostly are males. They're always out in the field. So whether it started as doing photography, as documenting their subjects, especially I think leopards with the different spots and identifying in that way, it started to become a more creative side for everyone, well, for the guides. And personally, I've noticed when going on safari, a lot of the guys do have their cameras now, and they interact with their clients and take pictures as well. And again, I think it also brings the experience for the clients that they're traveling with. So I definitely think that's the reason. You don't see a lot of female guides out there. Will change soon. But I think that also does contribute a lot to why there is more, in South Africa, more male photographers than female photographers. Is it more challenging? I don't think so. There are a lot more younger female photographers, I think, coming up now. maybe because they are more becoming, more into wildlife. So we now know we don't necessarily have to be field guides to always be out in the field, but then again, it does take a lot of money to go on safari and take images of animals. So it is, so there is also that, I suppose, the whole money aspect of it. But I think just from noticing there are a lot more females becoming part of it, but not necessarily wildlife photographers, but journalists in the sense. So incorporating stories as well as just images. So yeah, we're definitely getting there. I think a lot more people are becoming more inspired with the fact that the rhino population's, decreasing, so is the lions. So I think a lot more of our youth are becoming a bit more proactive and showing their passion through photography, which is a really wonderful medium to do that. I don't think there are females that are less interested in photography, in wildlife photography, than other fields. Again, it's an expensive profession and hobby, so if you're able to afford it or be a part of it, then I think, it's easier to be a part of that. So more female photographers are coming up, not necessarily because of the wildlife, because you have to go to destination. It's very destination bound, while studio, obviously you just hire out a studio and it's easier. So yes, I've noticed a lot more females are not necessarily into wildlife photography, even though there is a passion for it. But for money's sake and earning a living, they'll probably go for something that is a bit more convenient. And it's the same with men as well. So again, I don't think it's gender bound. Going back to what I said previously, I think it's purely because of the field guide incorporation of it. Also, it's not part of your question, but maybe why female photographers aren't getting as much recognition as well, as depending on the platform they're posting their images on. So flooding your images on Facebook, which is already a very image-flooded medium, is not going to get you recognition or as much recognition, because everyone is putting images out. Whether you're a photographer, professional, or if it's a hobby or anything, if it's a picture of your dog, everyone is putting pictures up, so it's a medium that is just overloaded with images. So if you want to really stand out and be noticed, you have to be very picky on what medium you post your images on. So what competitions as well, or putting it into competitions and just slowly start getting recognition there. Again, putting stuff on Facebook and saying, please like, please share. I'm a professional. No one's going to take you seriously because everyone is doing that. You have to be very selective, I think, on what platforms you share and how you share your images. So saying to everyone, I'm putting up prints, I'm selling them and flooding and flooding and flooding, you become desensitized. Facebook, everyone scrolls through, it's instant gratification. So unless you have an image that completely stands out and grabs a person's attention, Facebook isn't the way. It's a nice way to get a group of people, but everyone's sharing images there. So again, just take account of where you put your pictures. And with competitions like the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, hey, who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of years. I think definitely females will start becoming a bit bigger in the whole wildlife photography genre. Hope that answers your questions, and we'll chat to you soon.
So, how do we, this is a tough one, because I think looking back, and Penny might have mentioned this, is throughout the years, if I look back to my guiding days, where I was a field guide, guiding, not photography, just guiding, there wasn't too many female guides as such. Now it's changed. If I look at the same lodges now, it's maybe even up to 40% there's female guides out there. So a lot of people who do photographic safaris or lead them come from the guiding industry. So that might be one thing. That is changing slowly. Is it a tough thing to do? Yes, because the gear is heavy, and this is not a sexist thing. Please don't send me hate mail. The gear is heavy. You spend long time sometimes out on your own in the field, dirty, uncomfortable and stuff. And a lot of even, if I look at guests here, a lot of females find that difficult. They find it challenging. It's not saying it's impossible. Looking around, I can probably think of about 4 or 5 off the top of my head, female wildlife photographers out there who are posting images. Now, Some of them do very good work, and they have a brilliant eye. Now, some might argue that female wildlife photographers are more creative, and because of male-female, maybe the females are more emotional. And sometimes, I mean, I'm the first one to say, shoot what you see and shoot what you feel. But maybe, and this is just a guess, maybe sometimes female photographers might get too attached to a moment, to the emotional relevance, the emotional effect of a sighting, of the moment they photograph, and they overvalue the actual technical quality of the image. Does that make sense? Maybe it's an emotional thing, maybe it's a creative thing. Maybe some female photographers are more creative than guys. So guys, no hate mail, I'm just talking here. So maybe, and that, they put images out there which tends then to alienate people. People don't understand the images because they're coming from a different psyche. Look, I'm drawn to the creative and emotional type of photography, and that's maybe why I've got some female wildlife photographers' names who pop up. But in South Africa specifically, I think because we've got so much wildlife falling out the trees everywhere, there's a lack of artistic interpretation in South African wildlife photographers because they think content is king. Content is king on social media. In wildlife photography, it's only half of the equation. You still need to have a certain amount of emotion, of storytelling in your images. And maybe, I'm talking from a specific South African point of view now, maybe a lot of female wildlife photographers don't get that recognition because the male side of the industry are so drawn to, it must be a lion killing something, it must be mating lions, big snarling teeth, leopards. A leopard in an image doesn't make it a good image. It makes it a leopard image. Yeah? So a lot of people, guys specifically, are drawn towards purely content. Wow, great image, wonderful, 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 when it's actually quite a shitty image. You see, it's tough. I'm going to probably stick to that. I think maybe the psyche of what females are doing photography-wise is slightly different in that naturally they are drawn to the emotional, the creative side of it. Then, Penny's in the process of working herself up in the industry. There's a couple of other people as well. What female wildlife photographers should not do is try too hard. Because whether it's a chip on the shoulder because it's a female photographer in a male-dominated industry, whatever, move past that. Don't try too hard and push your stuff too hard. It comes across as desperate sometimes. Put stuff out that speaks to you. Again, coming back to Naomi's question, pick winners that you like. Whatever it is, whether people like it or not, you will then define yourself, and it's going to take time. It takes time for all of us. Define yourself as a photographer, not a male or female, just a photographer who's good at creating wildlife images. People will buy into it eventually. They have to. And you don't have to have 200,000 followers because that means nothing. If you have 1,000 followers that like what you do, you are a respected wildlife photographer. Done. Because people appreciate the work that you're doing. So keep it real. Male or female, keep your photography real and people will be drawn to you and what you have to put out. It's a tough question. Really, really is. Love to hear your thoughts. Kylie, if you're reading this, if you're watching this, let me know your thoughts. Amanda, Colette, Maggie, Emma, Piper, all of you guys, all of you ladies watching this, I'd love to hear your opinion. Why there are not more female wildlife photographers in the industry. I think I'm going to stick to my answer. I think it's somewhere in there, but yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Tough one. Tough one. Very, very good question, Kylie. Thank you. Right, guys, that's it for episode 6 of the series in which I answer your wildlife photography questions. If you have questions, send them in. Lots of stuff coming in. We're probably looking at about 12 episodes by now. I want to see how far we can take this. So get involved. Get involved in the discussion, leave comments, and send me your questions. If you have a specific question for anybody in the office, let me know. I'm going to pull them in and then get them to answer your questions for you. I think that's about it for today. I look forward to hearing more questions from you. You keep asking them, and we will keep on answering them for you. My name is Gerry. I'm from Wild Eye. I will see you next time.